A medieval wooden tank rolls into view. Oak walls bolted with iron straps. A collapsible ramp claps down. Angled plank armor rises into a giant A shape. Chains rattle tight, and from tiny triangular embrasures, you see the flicker of match cord and the glint of crossbow limbs. A knight on A. Warhorse thinks he's about to win the entire war in one charge. And then the tank becomes a snap-built city in the middle of a field. Wagons locking wheel to wheel, shields sealing gaps, smoke puffing out like a forge. And suddenly the cavalry's greatest weapon, momentum, gets stolen in a single. Heartbeat. This is the Hussite wagon fort, the bizarre late medieval answer to the nightmare question that obsessed commanders. How can infantry survive, let alone win, against heavily armored knights on horseback? And the irony is delicious, because the early Hussite armies were mostly farmers and city dwellers, often ill-trained, armed with whatever life put in their hands: pitchforks, pickaxes, axes, thrashing flails, polearms. Yet they weaponized necessity by combining wagons with early handheld firearms and small artillery, and held off well-equipped knights again and again through the late medieval into the early modern era. Yes, other armies tried solutions. Pick terrain and bottlenecks like a trap. Scots at Loudon Hill, 1907. Flemish militia at Courtrai/Golden Spurs, 1902. English at Kersey, 1946. Or pack infantry into deep pike masses like the Swiss later did in the Burgundian Wars and beyond. While the gunpowder era pushed formations like pike and shot systems into the spotlight, you see echoes by the time of Bicocca 1522. And even the myth-shattering infantry showdown at Rocroi, 1943. But in the early 1400s, the Hussite method was the most theatrical and terrifying. It didn't just choose a fortress, it brought one. Contemporary accounts and later histories center the innovation on Jan Ika, a Bohemian nobleman turned hard-case commander who had fought earlier as a mercenary and is linked with the Battle of Grunwald/Tannenberg 1410. Then rose fast after the first defenestration of Prague, 30 July 1419, threw Bohemia into open turmoil. Hussites is a blanket term for religious reformatory and revolutionary movements in 15th century Bohemia inspired by Jan Hus. And when the conflict escalated, Pope Martin V issued a crusading bull on 17 March 1420, calling for a crusade against them, launching the first in a series of anti-Hussite crusades, because they refused to abandon teachings branded heretical. Now here's where the story turns into a cinematic. How did they survive that moment? At the Battle of Sudum, 25 March 1420, Ika led roughly 400 Hussites and used about 12 wagons in a position hemmed by ponds and swampy ground, repelling a superior enemy and proving that if you can make knights fight where horses can't run, steel stops being magic. The core trick wasn't better weapons, it was better rules, as modern summaries put it. If early guns and crossbows work best behind walls, then build mobile walls, a Wagenburg, so the enemy can't force you into open shot combat. And Ika's logic was brutally practical. He looked at what he truly had: high morale, cohesion, trust in leadership, and stopped trying to train peasants to fight like knights. Instead, he doubled down on what they already knew: tools reforged into weapons, handed with iron, axes heavy enough to hook or split, picks that bite through gaps, city defenders already familiar with crossbows and the new handguns, and wagon handling skills farmers lived with daily. Then he built a strategy around two hard principles, straight out of a commander's nightmare. Never let the enemy impose the action, and defensive warfare is superior to offensive warfare. But here's the genius twist: once you can throw up a fortress anywhere, defense becomes an offensive weapon, because you can march into open country and still fight like you're behind a wall. Wagons have been used since antiquity as transport and camp security, but the Hussite system turned the convoy into the battlefield itself. March order designed so the entire train could fold into a fort fast, round or square depending on terrain, horses pulled into the center, wagons bound with chains, gaps sealed by big shields, guns and hand cannons waiting like teeth behind timber. And if you want maximum VO3 retention, start with the transformation sequence. Engineers and sappers at the front clearing obstacles, flags relaying orders down the columns, scouts riding ahead, heavier cavalry in van and rearguard not to win but to delay. Just long enough for wood to become a fortress before the lance wall hits. And yes, the early wagons were simple farm carts. But after hard lessons, they were optimized into specialized war wagons, your wooden tanks. Bigger and more stable, crews entering via collapsible ramps, outer walls reinforced with extra planks, and crucially, angled panels like a capital A, so incoming bolts, and even crude shot glance, skip or lose punch. Reconstructions describe extra wall sections being carried and attached on the threatened side. Plus, a low plank dropped to block attacks from underneath. Now layer in the controversial legend spice that keeps viewers glued. Later writers, including the humanist Ennius Silvius Piccolomini, later Pope Pius II, claim wagons could even encircle and cut off parts of enemy armies. Many historians debate how literal that was, but as a visual and a tactic, it's perfect. A ring closes. A trapped wedge of knights and men-at-arms suddenly finds itself fighting a wooden wall that spits bolts and smoke. Each wagon becomes a little platoon with its own commander and strict hierarchy, so orders travel instantly, because slow reactions kill you when cavalry is seconds away. And inside the fort the science is timing. Small and mid-sized guns and hand cannons loaded with heavy stones or scatter, loads, nails, small rocks, lead, designed to shred momentum at about 100 meters. The exact moment when a horse wants to commit and cannot easily stop. Wagon-mounted guns also have a battlefield advantage over static city artillery. They can be shifted quickly along the line, concentrated toward the threatened face, and used to punch the charge's rhythm out of existence before it lands. In our AI reconstruction, you can show an estimated crew pattern repeated wagon after wagon. Horse handlers, crossbowmen, early gunners, flail and halberd shockmen, pavies bearers, because even if exact numbers varied, the combined arms concept is the point. Timber for cover, missiles to break the charge, disciplined openings to unleash counterattacks. And the counterattack is where the Hussites stop being defensive and become predatory. After the first artillery volley steals the charge's force, pavises peel aside. A sally port opens. Infantry surges out to finish the disrupted enemy at close range, while cavalry slips out through a rear gap, rides around and slams the enemy from behind, turning a failed charge into a rout and a rout into a hunt. And this is why the wagon fort left such a deep impression that other armies kept talking about wagon forts well into the 17th century, even if nobody matched Hussite efficiency, because it solved the cavalry problem with a recipe any desperate army could copy: discipline, terrain sense, mobile cover, and gunpowder. But the ending is the cold evolution of technology. As firearms became more powerful, wooden wagons stopped being reliable protection. Once enemy guns could reliably smash timber, the wooden tank stopped being a tank and became a coffin, and the wagon forts faded from Europe's battlefields.